Hi everybody! Today's video is all about 2025 garden planning. I wanted to give you guys a little overview of what are my plans, what I'm gonna plant this year, and some of the things that I have decided not to grow, and just show you a little bit the fails of last year, what I learned from them, and also some of the successes. For anybody who's new here, my name is Luisa, and I bought an abandoned farm almost 3 years ago now in southwestern Finland, and that is in the growing zone 5A. The farm is called Siskola, so hence the channel name, and that comes from the Finnish word sisko, that means sister. Zone 5 experiences mild summers and cold winters, so the area and Finland in general has quite a short growing season. The last frost date falls sometimes in early May, and the first frost comes around mid-October. If you are a beginner gardener, you might want to check out the video I did on my first year called Planning a Vegetable Garden Without Any Previous Experience. It is video number 36. I will leave a link up here and also in the description box. This will be my third gardening season at Siskola. The first summer, my dad and myself made a 100 square meter fenced garden, or a bit over 1,000 square feet. But last year we extended it a little bit further with 50 more square meters or 500 square feet. The garden is on top of an old field, so it is located on the place that gets most of the sunlight. But on the other hand, there is also a lot of fast-growing weeds to deal with, especially the invasive couch grass or quickgrass that seems to thrive there. The soil is hard clay, so it needs a lot of improving. It also retains moisture, so it is important to have it well drained. I had to make raised garden beds with bought soil to be able to start growing faster. Soon I might start having a little of my own compost to top off the garden beds, but until I have a good composting system, I have had to rely on bought soil, and there is very much needed. Last year I added a couple new metallic garden beds to the extended garden, and I will only add one more that I already have assembled, but then I think it is enough of them. But I would like to improve on some of the garden beds by framing them a little bit better, perhaps by using some logs from the trees we cut down. I might even use the wood from the old aviary to build some proper garden beds. I try to use the material we have lying around as much as possible. Last year I used the Moonbased planting calendar and sowed seeds for crops that yield an above ground harvest when the moon was increasing, or going from new moon to full moon. The root crops, like the onions, beets and carrots, I planted between the full moon and the last quarter when the moon was waning. So in theory, that is when the moon's gravitational pull decreases slightly, and the roots are more likely to develop better by growing downward. I definitely think that the onions were bigger, but I did not have any success with the potatoes last year. The potato harvest was actually a total bust on so many levels. The potatoes were small, got blight early, and had lots of holes from the click beetle larva, the wireworms. The quickgrass also competes strongly with most crops and reduces their yield. And since I did not cut it back around the potatoes as much as I should have, it completely took over the field. The seed potatoes are also quite expensive to buy, and I don't have any place at the moment to store them, since the root cellar is not in a usable condition. So I think this year I will skip the potatoes, or at least not plant them in the field, perhaps just a few in one garden bed or in some small containers. I was not supposed to order any more seeds for this year, since I got so many on last year's autumn sale, but I ended up ordering some more anyway. I got inspired to try a couple of new things again this year, so I got some Swiss chard, celery, wild rocket and kale seeds. One of you suggested I try growing kale, so I might do that, or opt for the Swiss chard instead, or even plant both if I can find the space. Both should be quite simple to grow, but I think chard is a little less bitter and has a more delicate texture than kale, so that might be easier to cook and prepare. I also wanted to plant some delicious asparagus in the garden. Growing asparagus requires patience. From planting to harvest it takes 2 to 3 years, but the wait is well worth the reward. Asparagus can crop for about 20 years, so I just have to figure out the best place to plant them. They need a sunny location, so prime real estate in the garden. I also ordered some more Siberian irises, the same lilac variety that I planted last spring on the north slope behind the house. They actually propagate themselves, but I just wanted to speed up a little the process. Irises should also be divided every 3 to 5 years or so to improve airflow around each plant. By dividing large clumps, you can actually get more plants as you separate each rootstock and replant it. I had a great success with Dahlias last year. It was the first time I have planted them and got 4 different varieties. They were really simple to plant, hardly never needed watering, and bloomed for a very long time. I stored the tubers over winter, so it will be interesting to see if they have survived to bloom once again. This week I actually ordered a couple more dahlias, a variety called Dazzling Magic. It is truly dazzling, with a stunning fusion of yellow apricot petals blending towards a vibrant red in their center. We talked about the potatoes, but let's look at some other fails or misfortunes of last season's garden. The beginning of the summer was once again very dry, so my broccoli seedlings were suffering already from the moment they were planted outside. Half just shriveled up, and the other half was weak and attacked by flea bugs again, like the previous year, quite early on, so I did not get much of a harvest. Perhaps I should have used a shade cloth to cover them from the harshest sun like the previous year, but I got a little complacent. The broccolis also take up quite a lot of space to grow, so I was thinking of planting the asparagus instead and perhaps keep the broccolis altogether this year. Flea bugs seem to be a recurring problem at Siskola, but previously I have dealt with them by putting ashes on the affected area. They also like nibbling on the leaves of the beetroots and turnips, but that doesn't really affect the root. What affects the root is the lack of rain, and even if the turnips actually grew last year, they grew slowly and were quite bitter and woody. A lack of certain trace elements like boron may also cause bitterness, but I think the problem was just the lack of rain or watering. So the turnips were a bit of a disappointment and not at all what I wanted. As some of you know, I planted corn last year, but we did not quite manage to get a harvest from them in the end. They grew pretty well and even made cobs, but did not ripen enough to actually eat. The summer season is short here, but I know that it is possible to grow corn even in Finland. It might not be easy, but it's not impossible, so I'm not giving up on them quite yet. I ordered a very early and productive variety called Golden Dwarf, and it is a low bushy plant that produces small cobs. Perhaps I can put them outside even a bit earlier this year, if we have a warm spring again like the past 2 years. I also tried planting chickpeas, but they never even sprouted. I have no idea what happened to them. They are not ideal to plant in Finland either, but I was just very curious to try. I also had some problems with tomato blight again in the end of the growing season, but I still managed to get quite a lot of fruit from the tomato plants. When the blight came to the leaves, I removed them all, and that helped the tomatoes on the vine to actually mature unscathed. However, this year I will only plant 6 tomato plants at Siskola. Most likely the Super Sweet 100, that was very prolific, and then the very sweet yellow sun gold, and perhaps one more variety. I will probably plant some as well in my yard in the city, where they won't suffer from blight. The garden grew quite a bit, so I planted some berry bushes in the new part. I planted strawberries of the polka variety, and they grew very nicely. I had some snake decoys in the area, so the berries were also quite safe from the birds. I also planted 3 different blueberry bushes, but all of them were quite puny, so it will be interesting to see if they have survived or been snuffed out by the quick grass. I really wanted to get a variety called Pink Lemonade with the pink sweet berries, and I also got a variety called Sunshine Blue and the famous Patriot. The berries don't do so well in the clay soil where water can be logged, so I added some proper acidic compost for them and plenty of nutrients. Blackberries are one of my favorite berries, so I planted a thornless blackberry variety called Black Satin, I believe, against the fence on the west side of the garden. I really hope it will produce some delicious sweet berries this year. I also planted a vine against the fence next to the gate. It will be interesting to see if it has survived. Hopefully it will thrive and grow for many years to come. One of my biggest disappointments last year was my herb garden. After such an amazing first year with many harvests, it was very disappointing not to get more than a minimal amount of everything. The dill got all droopy and wilted. Leaf wilting is actually a common disease that affects dill, leading to a droopy, discolored foliage and stunted growth. Dill is sensitive to soil-borne plant diseases, often caused by fungi, so it cannot be grown in the same place for a long time. I did not know that it is advisable to change the growing place of dill and other flowering plants such as parsley, carrot, coriander, cumin, celery or parsnip yearly. Next to the dill I grew the parsley, so that also suffered. It got discolored and turned red. Luckily I still had lots from the previous year in the freezer, so to this day I have not run out yet. I tried to do crop rotation as much as possible, but I didn't think of doing that to the herb garden as well, especially since they grow in a separate garden bed closer to the house. Last year I tried winter sowing and it was not the greatest of successes. There were just so many changes with the weather, from very sunny, melting the snow, to rain and frosty temperatures, so most of the flowers did not germinate, and those that did were stunted in their growth and came out late anyway. However, the onions that I winter sowed were successful, but I think it's because they did not get soaking wet from the melting snow and then freeze, because I had them under the cover of the terrace roof and the flowers were just under the bare sky. I believe that was most of my failures from last season, but as they say, failure paves the way to success. So when things go wrong, I learn from my mistakes and figure out what might have happened and how I can avoid it next time. So I don't mind failing. I am a beginner gardener after all, so things going wrong is part of life and the journey. Even Ruth Stout started gardening at the age of 48 and she became a great success, so it is never too late to learn. It is nice to look back at the successes of the garden as well and remember how wonderful it feels to see the final results of your hard work and patience. We had a great harvest of zucchinis, many big carrots, nice medium-sized onions, juicy beetroots, sweet strawberries, and lots of lovely flowers, especially chamomile flowers that I can enjoy in a warm cup of infusion. I even managed to get many ripe peppers without a greenhouse, so that is very nice. We do not get a big harvest of them here in the north, but they are easy and fun to grow anyway. And the padron peppers that I really love that you pick and eat green are especially easy to grow in Finland, so I will plant many of those this year as well. And I almost forgot to mention the huge amount of sweet peas that Nico and myself enjoyed to the maximum. And of course the crunchy and lovely green beans that grow extremely well and are so delicious and healthy to eat. Every time you plant a crop, it is like making a withdrawal from the land. While your plants flourish, they're taking essential nutrients like nitrogen, phosphorus and potassium from the soil. Over time, these withdrawals can leave your soil depleted, leading to sad, stunted plants and lower yields. Different crops have different root systems, different irrigation needs, exploring the soil for different minerals. Corn plants, for example, love nitrogen, while tomatoes need phosphorus. Legume plants like beans and peas fix nitrogen from the air and deposit it in the soil, improving its fertility. Studies show that crop rotation can increase yields by an average of 15 to 20% and sometimes even doubling production. By replenishing nutrients and controlling pests naturally, crop rotation minimizes the need for chemical fertilizers and pesticides, protecting the environment and our health. Let's take a look at the preliminary garden plan that I drew for this year. I listed the things I want to grow and numbered the garden beds so I can easily compare to other years how I rotate the crops. I was just thinking of what I want to grow, what I want more of, and what I'm willing to skip this year. I will need to find some space for the things I'm experimenting with, like asparagus. I put it in this garden bed, but since it's a perennial plant, that will be the same for many years. Perhaps I should put it in another place. Perhaps I can make a space for them here instead. This will be like playing musical chairs with this garden plan, so it will likely change many times still. But gardening starts now. From the 13th to 19th of February, the moon is waning, so I need to start planting my onion seeds already. The ripening period of the onion is long. It takes up to 8 months for the seed to develop into a large onion. So if you want big bulbs, you should sow the seeds already in February and give additional light to the small seedlings until they can be planted outside. Like last year, I will plant them in clusters and then separate them once I take them outside. That way I can grow more in less space under the grow lights. I wanted to end this video by showing you one of last year's fails that I plan to make into this year's success. Here are the geraniums that we planted with Nemo over a year ago now. They took forever to germinate and grew extremely slow and never really amounted to much. But as you can see, they are not dead yet, so perhaps with more soil and some nutrients and lots of sun and love, I can still help them flourish. Take care and have a great week. Bye bye!